Ethan Cole's hands were still covered in engine grease when he heard the knock. It was late, too late for neighbors in a quiet Oregon town where people minded their own business. But when he opened the door and saw Clara Bennett standing in the rain, mascara streaking down her face, he knew something had shattered in her world. What he didn't know was that her next words would tear apart everything he thought he understood about grief, about boundaries, about the careful walls he'd built around his heart. "I need to ask you something," she whispered. "Something impossible. Before we dive into this story, I want to invite you on this journey with me. Drop a comment below telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if this opening grabbed you, hit that like button. Now, let's begin. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, the kind of persistent Oregon drizzle that turned the world gray and made everything feel smaller, quieter, like the town itself was holding its breath. Ethan Cole stood at his kitchen sink, scrubbing the black grease from beneath his fingernails with the methodical precision of a man who had learned to find comfort in routine. 6 years. 6 years since the accident that had taken Rebecca. 6 years of waking up alone, of making breakfast for one 9-year-old boy who looked more like his mother every day, of filling the silence with the hum of broken appliances and the smell of motor oil. The microwave beeped. Ethan dried his hands and pulled out 2 plates of reheated spaghetti, one for him, one for Liam, who was sprawled on the living room floor doing homework with the television murmuring in the background. "Dad, I'm stuck on number 7, Liam called out, not looking up from his math worksheet. "What kind of stuck?" "The kind where I don't understand what they're asking." Ethan smiled despite himself. Liam had Rebecca's stubbornness, her refusal to give up even when frustrated. He walked over and knelt beside his son, studying the word problem, about trains leaving stations at different times. "Okay, so if one train—" The knock interrupted him. 3 sharp raps against the front door, urgent but hesitant. Ethan glanced at the clock on the wall, 8:47 p.m. In Maple Falls, people didn't just drop by unannounced after dark. They called first. They texted. They respected boundaries. "Stay here," Ethan said, rising to his feet. Through the peephole, he saw her, Clara Bennett, his neighbor from 2 houses down. They'd lived on the same street for 4 years, exchanged polite waves and occasional small talk about the weather or the broken streetlight that the city kept promising to fix. She was younger than him by maybe 5 years, somewhere in her early 30s, with dark hair usually pulled back in a practical ponytail and an air of quiet self-sufficiency that he recognized because he wore it himself. But the woman standing on his porch didn't look self-sufficient. She looked shattered. Ethan opened the door. Rain had plastered her hair to her face. Her eyes were red-rimmed and mascara had traced dark paths down her cheeks. She wore jeans and a gray sweatshirt, both soaked through, and she was shaking, whether from cold or emotion he couldn't tell. "Clara?" His voice came out softer than he'd intended. "Are you okay? What happened?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her hands twisted together, fingers knotting and unknotting in a nervous rhythm. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Can I come in? I need to talk to you about something." "Of course." Ethan stepped aside, suddenly aware of how small his living room was, how the dishes were still in the sink, how Liam was staring at them with open curiosity. "Liam, buddy, why don't you finish your homework in your room?" "But I'm stuck on—" "I'll help you in a few minutes. Go on." Liam gathered his papers with the dramatic slowness of a child who knew something interesting was happening and resented being excluded from it. When his bedroom door finally clicked shut, Ethan turned back to Clara. "Do you want to sit down? I can get you a towel, some coffee." "I don't need coffee." Clara remained standing, her arms wrapped around herself. I don't even know how to say this." Ethan waited. Years of single parenthood had taught him patience, had taught him that sometimes people needed silence more than reassurance. Clara took a shuddering breath. "Today is October 15th. He didn't understand the significance, but he nodded anyway. 4 years ago today, my husband died." The words came out flat, rehearsed, like she'd said them so many times they'd lost their weight. "Daniel, car accident. We'd only been married 8 months. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, and meant it. He knew that particular flavor of grief, the way it carved out hollow spaces inside you that never quite filled back in. "I didn't know." Why would you? Clara's laugh was bitter. I moved here to get away from people who knew, from the sympathy and the pitying looks and the constant reminders. She finally moved, walking to the window that overlooked the rain-soaked street. I thought if I came somewhere new, somewhere quiet, I could start over, build a different life. Did it work? For a while. She pressed her palm against the glass. I got a job at the library, bought a house, made it through each day without falling apart. That seemed like enough. Ethan heard the unspoken word hanging in the air. But? But? He prompted gently. Clara turned to face him, and the raw vulnerability in her expression made his chest tighten. But I'm 33 years old, and I want a child. I've wanted one for so long that the wanting has become this ache I can't ignore anymore. Her voice cracked. Daniel and I were going to start trying. We had names picked out. We'd already painted what would have been the nursery. The silence that followed felt heavy with all the futures that had died in twisted metal and broken glass. I understand, Ethan said quietly. Rebecca and I talked about having another baby. We wanted Liam to have a sibling. Clara's eyes filled with tears again. Then you know. You know what it's like to lose not just the person you love, but all the dreams you built together. Yes. I've tried to move on. I've tried dating. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you know how that goes? First dates where I have to explain why I'm damaged goods, where I can see the exact moment they decide I'm too much trouble, too complicated, too sad. Ethan did know. He'd been on 3 dates in 6 years, all of them disasters. The last woman had told him, kindly but firmly, that she didn't want to compete with a ghost. I thought about sperm banks, Clara continued, the words tumbling out faster now, like she was afraid if she stopped, she'd lose her nerve. Anonymous donors. I researched it for months, picked out profiles. Got all the way to the clinic entrance twice. What stopped you? Fear. She wiped at her eyes with the heel of her hand. Fear that I'd be doing it alone, that I'd fail, that I'd look at my child and see a stranger's features and feel nothing. She took a step toward him. But tonight, sitting in that house by myself on the anniversary of the worst day of my life, I realized something. I realized that if I don't at least try, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what if. And I can't do that again. Ethan's heart was pounding now, though he didn't yet understand why. Clara, what are you asking me? She met his gaze, and he saw the exact moment she made her decision, the moment she chose courage over safety. I'm asking you to help me have a baby. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and absurd and utterly sincere. Ethan's mind went blank. Then it raced. Then it stuttered to a halt again. You're asking me to... He couldn't even finish the sentence. I know how it sounds. Clara's words came faster, desperate. I know we barely know each other. I know it's crazy, but hear me out, please. Against his better judgment, Ethan nodded. You're a good man. I've watched you with your son, the way you are with him, patient, kind, present. That's what I want for my child. A good man's DNA. A good man's contribution. She stumbled over the word. But more than that, I want someone I can trust. Someone who won't disappear or demand rights or complicate things. Someone who understands loss and knows how to keep living anyway. Clara Patsom. I'm not asking for a relationship, she said quickly. I'm not asking you to be a father to this child, or to marry me, or to pretend we're something we're not. I'm just asking for help. Just help. Ethan's throat felt tight. That's not a small thing you're asking. I know. That's a whole person, a life. I know. And you want to just, what? Pretend it never happened? Pretend I'm not... He gestured helplessly. I don't know what I want, Clara admitted, her voice breaking. I just know I can't keep living like this, frozen in place, too afraid to want anything because wanting hurts too much. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm so tired of being afraid, Ethan. I'm so tired of being alone. The last word cracked something open inside him, because he understood. He understood exactly what she meant, the weight of cooking dinner for one while pretending not to notice the empty chair across from him, the weight of lying awake at night in a bed that felt too big, the weight of watching his son grow up and knowing Rebecca would never see it. I can't answer this tonight, he said finally. Clara nodded, looking simultaneously relieved and devastated. I understand. I shouldn't have. It was wrong to just show up like this, to put this on you. She moved toward the door. Forget I asked, please. Clara, wait. Ethan caught her arm gently. I didn't say no. I said I can't answer tonight. It's too big. I need time to think. She searched his face. How much time? I don't know, a few days? A week? Okay. She nodded again, more firmly this time. Okay, that's fair. Thank you for not throwing me out. I would never. Ethan released her arm. Are you going to be all right? Driving home in this state? I walked. I only live 2 houses down, remember? Right. Of course she had walked. Of course she had come here in the rain, soaking wet, to ask the impossible. Do you want an umbrella? I'm already soaked. Clara managed a weak smile. What's a little more rain? She left, disappearing into the darkness and drizzle. Ethan stood in the doorway watching until she reached her own house, until he saw the lights come on inside. Only then did he close the door. Dad? Ethan turned to find Liam standing in the hallway, homework forgotten. Was that Mrs. Bennett? Is she okay? It's just Clara. She's not married. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. And yeah, buddy, she's going through some stuff, but she'll be okay. Liam tilted his head, studying his father with the unnerving perception of a child who'd learned too young to read adult emotions. Are you okay? Honestly, I have no idea. That night, after helping Liam finish his homework and tucking him into bed, Ethan lay awake staring at the ceiling. Rain drummed against the roof in a steady rhythm that should have been soothing but instead felt accusatory, like the universe itself was demanding an answer to a question he didn't know how to process. I want a baby, and I want you to help me. He thought about Rebecca, about how they'd planned for Liam, how excited she'd been when the pregnancy test came back positive, how she'd cried happy tears and made him promise they'd give their child the kind of life neither of them had growing up. They'd kept that promise. For 4 years, they'd been happy. Ordinary, chaotic, exhausting happy. Then the drunk driver had crossed the center line on Highway 22, and happy had ended. Ethan had spent 6 years learning how to be enough for Liam, how to be mother and father both, how to braid hair even though his fingers were too clumsy, how to listen to stories about school crushes and playground politics without judgment. He'd built a life around survival, around being present for his son. Adding another child to that equation, especially under these circumstances, would change everything. But as he lay there in the dark, he found himself thinking not about the complications, but about Clara's face when she'd said she was tired of being afraid. He understood that tiredness in his bones. 3 days passed before he knocked on Clara's door. She answered wearing an apron dusted with flour, her hair pulled back, surprise evident in her eyes. Ethan, hi. Can we talk? She stepped aside to let him in. Her house was smaller than his, neat in the way of someone who lived alone and had too much time to organize. Books lined every available wall, and classical music played softly from a speaker in the kitchen. I've been baking, Clara said unnecessarily, gesturing at the counter where cooling racks held what looked like 24 cookies. Stress baking. It's either this or I'd organize my spice drawer for the 5th time this week. Clara. Ethan's voice was gentle. You don't have to be nervous. I asked you to father my child. I think nervous is appropriate. She laughed, but it came out strained. Would you like coffee? A cookie? I made chocolate chip, oatmeal raisin, and I'll help you. The word stopped her mid-sentence. What? I'll help you have a baby. Ethan took a breath. But I have conditions. Clara sank into the nearest chair, her face pale. Okay. What conditions? We take time, real time. We get to know each other first, not as neighbors, but as, I don't even know what to call it, as partners in this decision. Okay, Clara said slowly. How much time? However long it takes for both of us to be sure. Weeks, months, I don't know. Ethan pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. You said you're not asking for a relationship, and I respect that. But if we're going to do this, we need to at least be friends. Real friends who trust each other. That makes sense. And Liam, Ethan's voice grew firmer. Eventually, if we go through with this, he'll know. I won't hide it from him. He's already lost his mother. I won't build a family on lies. Clara nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. I wouldn't want you to. One more thing. Ethan leaned forward. If at any point you change your mind or I change mine, we walk away. No guilt, no pressure. This only happens if we're both all in. Yes, absolutely yes. Clara reached across the table, and after a moment's hesitation, Ethan took her hand. Her fingers were cold and trembling. Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me. I think I do, Ethan said quietly. They started small. Coffee on Saturday mornings at the diner on Main Street, sitting in a booth by the window and talking about everything except the reason they were there. Clara told him about growing up in Seattle, about her parents' messy divorce, about finding solace in books and libraries. Ethan told her about his own childhood in foster care, about meeting Rebecca in community college, about learning to be a father when he'd never had a model for what that looked like. You're doing an amazing job with Liam, Clara said during their third breakfast, watching through the window as a group of kids rode bicycles down the street. He's polite, curious, kind. You should be proud. Some days I feel like I'm just barely holding it together, Ethan admitted. Like one wrong move and the whole house of cards collapses. That's called being a parent, or so I'm told. Clara stirred her coffee absently. I'm terrified I'll be terrible at it. You won't be. How do you know? Because you care enough to be terrified. Ethan smiled. The people who should worry are the ones who think they have all the answers. Weeks turned into months. Coffee became dinner, became walks through the park where fall leaves crunched underfoot, and Liam ran ahead throwing sticks for invisible dogs. Clara started joining them for movie nights, sitting on the couch with a bowl of popcorn, while Liam provided running commentary on whatever animated film he'd chosen. Did you know, Liam announced one evening during a particularly loud action sequence, that octopuses have 3 hearts? I did not, Clara said seriously. What do they do with 3 hearts? 2 pump blood to the gills, and 1 pumps it to the rest of the body. That's remarkably efficient. Liam beamed, then returned his attention to the screen. But later, after he'd gone to bed, he appeared in the living room doorway where Clara and Ethan were cleaning up. I like her, he announced. Ethan nearly dropped the bowl he was carrying. What? Clara, I like her. She listens when I talk about stuff, and she doesn't pretend to know things she doesn't know. Liam looked between them with a 9-year-old's blunt assessment. Are you dating? No, Ethan said. At the same time, Clara said, it's complicated. Liam frowned. That's what adults say when the answer is yes, but they don't want to admit it. Liam. It's okay, Dad. I don't mind. His son's voice went soft. I know I'm supposed to miss Mom. And I do, but it's been a really long time, and sometimes I think... He trailed off, struggling for words. Think what, buddy? I think maybe it's okay if you're not sad forever. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. He'd spent 6 years trying to be strong for his son, trying to shield him from the worst of the grief, and here was Liam giving him permission to feel something other than loss. Come here, Ethan said, pulling his son into a hug. Over Liam's head, he met Clara's eyes and saw his own emotion reflected there. That night, after Clara had gone home and Liam was asleep, Ethan found himself at the window staring at her lit kitchen window 2 houses down. They'd been doing this dance for 3 months now, circling around each other, building something that felt like friendship but carried the weight of potential. He thought about Rebecca, about whether she'd approve, whether she'd understand, whether she'd want him to be happy. In his heart, he knew the answer. Rebecca had been pragmatic, forward-thinking. She would have hated seeing him frozen in place. The next Saturday, Ethan took Clara to the cemetery. You don't have to do this, she said as they walked between headstones, her breath misting in the cold November air. Yes, I do. Ethan stopped in front of a simple granite marker. Rebecca Cole, beloved wife and mother. If we're going to do this, really do this, I need you to understand who she was, what we were. Clara stood quietly beside him as he talked, about how Rebecca had terrible taste in music but sang off-key anyway, about how she'd insisted on hanging Christmas lights in July because they made her happy. about how she'd been fierce and funny and utterly devoted to making their small family work. "She sounds wonderful," Clara said when he finished. She was. Ethan knelt and brushed leaves from the base of the headstone. "And I think she'd tell me I'm an idiot for waiting this long to live again." When he stood, Clara was crying silently, tears tracking down her face. "I brought you here because I need you to know something," Ethan said. "If we do this, if we have a child together, it doesn't erase Rebecca. It doesn't replace what I lost, but it also doesn't dishonor her memory." He took Clara's hand. "I think she'd want me to help someone who's hurting the way I was, the way I sometimes still am." "Thank you," Clara whispered, "for trusting me with this." They stood there together in the cold, two people bound by loss and the fragile hope of something new. December came with snow and holiday lights strung along Main Street. Ethan found himself shopping for Christmas presents with Clara's preferences in mind without consciously deciding to do so. She liked mysteries, dark chocolate, and soft scarves. He bought all three and wrapped them carefully. On Christmas Eve, Clara came for dinner. She and Liam made cookies while Ethan attempted a turkey that came out slightly dry but edible. They ate by candlelight, laughing at Liam's increasingly elaborate theories about Santa's logistics. And for the first time in 6 years, Ethan's house felt genuinely full. After Liam went to bed, Ethan and Clara sat by the Christmas tree with mugs of hot chocolate. "I need to tell you something," Clara said. Ethan's heart lurched. "Okay. I went to my therapist this week, told her about all of this." She stared into her mug. "She asked me if I was ready, if I'd really processed my grief, or if I was just trying to fill a hole." "What did you say?" "I said I didn't know, that maybe there's no such thing as being completely ready for something this big." Clara looked up at him. But then she asked me a different question. She asked if I was doing this for me or to me, if it was about healing or hiding. And I realized it's healing, not because having a baby will magically fix everything, but because choosing hope, choosing to build something new, that's what healing looks like for me. She set down her mug. "I'm ready, Ethan, whenever you are." Ethan thought about Liam's words. Maybe it's okay if you're not sad forever. He thought about Rebecca and what she would want for him. He thought about Clara's courage in knocking on his door that rainy October night. "I'm ready too," he said. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the colored lights blink on the tree, both of them aware that they'd just crossed an invisible line from which there was no going back. 2 weeks later, on a quiet Sunday afternoon with Liam at a friend's house, Ethan sat his son down for the most difficult conversation of his young fatherhood. "I need to talk to you about something important," he began. Liam looked up from his video game with immediate alertness. He'd learned early that important meant serious. "Am I in trouble?" "No, buddy. Nothing like that." Ethan took a breath. "You remember how you said you liked Clara?" "Yeah. And you said it was okay if I wasn't sad forever." "Yeah." Liam's face grew cautious. "Are you going to marry her?" "No, not right now anyway. But Clara wants to have a baby, and she's asked me to help her." Liam blinked. "Like, you'd be the dad?" "Biologically, yes. But Clara would raise the baby. It would be her child." His son processed this with the literal mindedness of a 9-year-old. "So I'd have a half-brother or half-sister?" "Technically. Would they live with us?" "No, they'd live with Clara." "But we'd see them." "I imagine so. We're neighbors." Ethan studied his son's face, trying to gauge his reaction. "How do you feel about that?" Liam was quiet for a long moment, his young face serious in a way that made Ethan's chest ache. Finally, he spoke. "Mom's been gone a long time." "Yes, she has. And Clara's nice. She makes you smile more." "She does." "Then I think—" Liam paused, choosing his words carefully. "I think if it makes you happy and it makes her happy, then maybe it's a good thing." He looked up at his father. Is it okay if I'm a little scared too?" Ethan pulled his son close. "It's more than okay. I'm scared too." "Really?" "Really. This is big and complicated, and I don't have all the answers." Liam leaned against him. "But you'll figure it out. You always do." The faith in his son's voice was humbling and terrifying in equal measure. That evening, Ethan called Clara. "We're ready," he said simply. "Liam knows, and he's okay with it. So whenever you want to start." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Clara's voice, thick with tears. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me this chance." They started trying in January. The process was clinical, awkward, and nothing like either of them had imagined. They'd done research, read articles, consulted with doctors. Clara tracked her cycle with scientific precision. When the time came, they were both nervous and overly formal, treating the whole thing with the solemnity of a business transaction. The first month, nothing happened. The second month, nothing happened. By the third month, doubt began creeping in. "Maybe this isn't going to work," Clara said one evening in late March. They were sitting in her kitchen, and she looked exhausted. "Maybe I waited too long. Maybe I'm broken." "You're not broken," Ethan said firmly. "How do you know? What if Daniel and I couldn't have kids? What if that's why it never happened, and I just never found out because he died before we could try?" "Then we'll deal with that. We'll figure out another way." "What if there is no other way?" Clara's voice broke. "What if I'm just destined to—" "Stop." Ethan reached across the table and took both her hands. "We're not giving up after 3 months. These things take time." "But what if—" "No what ifs. We keep trying until you tell me you're done trying. Until then, we don't give up." Clara nodded, wiping at her eyes. Okay. April brought rain and disappointment. May brought flowers and more negative tests. By June, Clara was struggling to maintain hope. "I can't do this anymore," she said one evening, sitting on her front porch steps while Ethan sat beside her. "I can't keep getting my hopes up every month just to have them crushed." "Then don't get your hopes up. Just keep moving forward." "That's easy for you to say." "No, it isn't." Ethan's voice was gentle. "Every month that this doesn't work, I see you hurting, and it kills me. But giving up means guaranteeing it will never happen. Keep trying means there's still a chance." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. "When did you become so wise?" "Single parenthood. It forces you to find answers even when you don't have them." They sat there in the fading light, two people bound by hope and the stubborn refusal to quit. July arrived with heat and humidity and another negative test. Clara cried in Ethan's arms, and he held her, thinking about Rebecca and how grief never truly ended, it just changed shape. But then August came. Ethan was at the garage, elbow deep in an engine, when his phone rang. Clara's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," he answered, wedging the phone between his shoulder and ear. "What's up?" "Can you come over?" Her voice sounded strange. "Like right now?" "I'm working, but I can probably—" "Ethan," she cut him off. "I need you to come over, please." 20 minutes later, he stood in her bathroom doorway, staring at 3 plastic sticks lined up on the counter. All of them showed 2 pink lines. "I took 3 different brands," Clara said from behind him, her voice shaking. "I needed to be sure." Ethan couldn't speak, couldn't process. 7 months of trying, 7 months of disappointment and doubt and keeping hope alive, and now— "Say something," Clara whispered. He turned to find her standing there with tears streaming down her face, her hands pressed to her stomach as if already protecting the tiny life beginning there. "We did it," he said, his own voice breaking. "Clara, we did it." She laughed through her tears, and then they were hugging, holding each other with the fierce relief of people who'd weathered a storm and made it to shore. The next day, they went to the doctor together. Clara filled out paperwork while Ethan sat in the waiting room, his leg bouncing with nervous energy. When they called her back, she reached for his hand. "Come with me?" In the exam room, the ultrasound technician squirted cold gel on Clara's stomach and moved the wand across her skin. At first, there was only static and shadows. Then, "There," the technician said, pointing at the screen, a tiny flicker, quick and steady and impossibly alive. "That's the heartbeat," she said, smiling at their awed faces. Ethan stared at the screen, at the barely visible curve that would become a person, and felt the weight of responsibility settle over him like a familiar coat. This was real. This was happening. Clara was crying again, but this time it was different. This time it was joy. On the drive home, they were quiet, both processing what they'd just seen. Finally, Clara spoke. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Are you scared? Ethan thought about lying, about being brave and reassuring, but they'd built this on honesty, and he wouldn't stop now. Terrified, he admitted. You? Beyond terrified. She looked down at her still flat stomach. But also, happy. Happier than I've been in years. Yeah, Ethan said softly. Me too. That night he told Liam. His son's eyes went wide. Really? It worked? It worked. So I'm going to be a big brother? Looks like it. Liam was quiet for a moment, then broke into a huge grin. Cool. The simplicity of it made Ethan laugh. Just cool? Well, yeah, I mean, babies are kind of boring at first, right? They just sleep and cry and poop. But once they're older, I can teach them stuff. Like how to ride a bike and catch frogs and… He stopped. Wait, will Clara's baby call you Dad? The question landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. I don't know, Ethan said honestly. That's something Clara and I will have to figure out. But you're going to be around, right? Like, you're not just going to disappear. Nobody. I'm not going anywhere. Liam nodded, satisfied. Good, because I think Clara needs us. And maybe we kind of need her too. Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan thought. His 9-year-old had just articulated what he'd been circling around for months. Somewhere along the way, this had stopped being just about helping a neighbor and had become about building something together, something that looked suspiciously like a family. And that terrified him more than anything. The first trimester was harder than either of them had anticipated. Clara's morning sickness started at week 6 and didn't discriminate by time of day. Ethan would find her pale and exhausted at the library where she worked, sneaking saltine crackers between shelving books. She lost weight instead of gaining it, and the doctor's concern became his concern. You need to eat something, Ethan said one evening, standing in her kitchen with a container of bland chicken soup he'd made specifically for her sensitive stomach. I can't. Clara sat at the table with her head in her hands. Everything smells wrong. Everything tastes wrong. You have to try. The baby needs… I know what the baby needs. Her voice came out sharp, and she immediately looked apologetic. I'm sorry. I'm not angry at you. I'm just miserable. Ethan set the soup down and pulled out a chair beside her. What can I do? Invent a time machine so I can skip to the second trimester when this supposedly gets better? Fresh out of time machines. How about ginger tea instead? Clara managed a weak smile. You're too good to me. That's what friends do. The word felt inadequate even as he said it. They were friends, yes, but they were also something more complicated. Co-parents? Partners? Two people navigating uncharted territory without a map? As the weeks progressed, Ethan found himself at Clara's house more often than his own. He'd come over after work to check on her, to make sure she'd eaten, to sit with her through the worst of the nausea. Liam started coming too, doing his homework at her kitchen table while she dozed on the couch. Dad, Liam said one afternoon, looking up from his math worksheet, is Clara going to be okay? She's going to be fine. This is normal for pregnancy. Mom wasn't sick like this with me, was she? The question caught Ethan off guard. Liam rarely asked about Rebecca's pregnancy. No, buddy, your mom had it easier. Every pregnancy is different. Liam chewed on his pencil, thinking, Clara looks really tired. Growing a person is hard work. Yeah, but who's taking care of her when we're not here? It was a fair question, one that had been nagging at Ethan for weeks. Clara lived alone. She had friends at the library, neighbors who waved hello, but no close family nearby. Her parents were divorced and remarried to other people, scattered across the country in their own complicated lives. That night, after putting Liam to bed, Ethan walked the 2 houses down to Clara's and found her asleep on the couch with the television on mute. She was curled on her side, one hand resting protectively over her small bump, her face soft in sleep but shadowed with exhaustion. He should leave. Let her rest. But something made him stay. Ethan found a blanket and draped it over her, then settled into the armchair across from the couch. He'd just stay for a little while, make sure she was all right. Just a little while. He woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and Clara standing in the doorway with 2 mugs of tea. You stayed all night, she said softly. Ethan sat up, his neck protesting the awkward angle he'd slept in. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I just wanted to make sure. I know. Clara handed him one of the mugs and sat down on the couch. Thank you. How are you feeling? Better, actually. I woke up hungry for the first time in weeks. She smiled, made myself actual toast, ate the whole thing. That's progress. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking tea while morning light filled the room. It felt domestic, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with the clinical process that had brought them here. Ethan, Clara said eventually, can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you doing this? Really doing this, I mean. Not the surface reasons about helping a neighbor or understanding grief. The real reason. Ethan considered the question. He could give her the easy answer, the one he'd been telling himself for months. But Clara deserved more than easy. When Rebecca died, I thought my life was over. Not in the dramatic sense, but in the practical one. I was 25 with a 3-year-old, working 2 jobs, drowning in grief and responsibility. I couldn't see past the next day, let alone imagine a future. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But Liam needed me to keep going, so I did. I learned how to be enough for him. I learned how to build a life that worked. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that this was all I got. One chance at love, one chance at family. That chapter was closed. And now? Clara's voice was barely above a whisper. Now I'm realizing maybe I was wrong. Maybe there are second chances, even when you don't expect them. He met her eyes. You knocked on my door asking for help, but you gave me something too. You reminded me that it's okay to want more than just survival. Clara's eyes filled with tears. I didn't give you anything. You're the one doing all the work. That's not true. Ethan set down his mug. Every time you let me help, every time you trust me with this journey, you're giving me permission to be part of something new. To build something forward instead of just looking back. I don't know what I did to deserve you, Clara said, wiping at her eyes. You asked, that's all. You were brave enough to ask. The moment stretched between them, weighted with things unsaid. Then Clara's stomach growled audibly, breaking the tension. They both laughed. Come on, Ethan said, standing up. Let's get you some real breakfast. By week 12, Clara's energy started returning. The nausea didn't disappear completely, but it became manageable. She could work full days again, could keep food down, could think about the pregnancy with excitement instead of just endurance. The second ultrasound showed a baby that looked less like a blob and more like an actual tiny human. Clara stared at the screen with wonder. Look at the fingers, she breathed. They're so small. Everything's developing perfectly, the technician said, moving the wand to get different angles. Would you like to know the sex? Clara looked at Ethan. They'd discussed this. Not yet. We want to wait. On the drive home, Clara was quieter than usual. What are you thinking about? Ethan asked. Names, she admitted. I've been making lists, but nothing feels right yet. You have time. I know, it's just, when Daniel and I talked about names, we had them picked out immediately. Emma for a girl, James for a boy. But now those names are tied to him, to that whole life that didn't happen, and using them feels wrong. So you'll find new ones. What if I can't? What if every name reminds me of what I lost? Ethan pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her. Clara, listen to me. This baby isn't replacing Daniel or the life you planned with him. This is something completely different, something new. I know that logically, but no buts. You're allowed to grieve what you lost and still be excited about what's coming. Those things can coexist. Clara nodded, but her expression remained troubled. Sometimes I feel guilty for being happy about this, like I'm betraying Daniel's memory. Do you think he'd want you to be miserable forever? No, he'd tell me I was being ridiculous and to stop overthinking everything. A small smile touched her lips. He was good at that, at pulling me out of my own head. Then maybe honor his memory by doing what he'd want. Be happy, be excited. Let yourself have this. Clara reached over and squeezed his hand. How did you get so wise? Trial and error. Lots of error. That evening, Ethan found Liam in his room, surrounded by library books about pregnancy and babies. What you reading, buddy? Liam held up a book with a cartoon stork on the cover. I'm trying to learn about babies. so I can help Clara when it comes. Ethan sat down on the edge of the bed, his heart swelling. That's really thoughtful of you. The books say babies cry a lot, and they need to eat every few hours, even at night. Liam looked concerned. Clara's going to be really tired. She will be. So maybe we should help her. Like, be there at night when the baby cries? Liam, Clara lives in her own house. We can't just... Why not? His son's logic was beautifully simple. We're right here. And you said we're kind of like a family now, right? Families help each other. Ethan didn't have a good answer for that. The conversation stayed with him over the following weeks as Clara's pregnancy became more visible. By week 16, she had a definite bump that she couldn't hide under loose shirts. People at the library started asking questions, and Clara had to navigate the complicated explanation of her situation. I just tell them I'm doing it on my own, she said one afternoon, sitting on her back porch while Ethan fixed the loose railing he'd been meaning to get to for weeks. Which is technically true. Is it? Ethan tightened a bolt. True, I mean? Clara was quiet for a moment. I don't know anymore. In the beginning, that's what I wanted, independence, full control. But now, she trailed off. Now what? Now I'm starting to realize how hard it's going to be alone, not just the practical stuff, though that's terrifying enough, but the emotional side. Having no one to share the little moments with, no one to panic to at 3 a.m. when something seems wrong. Ethan set down his wrench and sat beside her on the porch steps. You're not alone, Clara. You have me. But for how long? What happens when the baby comes and reality hits? What happens when you realize you've signed up for way more than you bargained for? Then I'll deal with it. We'll deal with it. You say that now. I say that because I mean it. Ethan's voice was firm. I'm not going anywhere. Not when things get hard. Not when the baby comes. Not ever. You're stuck with me. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. Promise? Promise. They sat there as afternoon faded into evening, watching the sky turn pink and gold. It was peaceful, comfortable, and something else Ethan couldn't quite name. Something that felt dangerously close to belonging. The following month brought Halloween and Clara's announcement that she could finally feel the baby moving. It's like butterflies, she told Ethan, her hand pressed to her stomach. Or little bubbles popping. The book says it's called quickening. Can I feel? Liam asked eagerly. Clara took his hand and placed it on her bump. They waited, both of them holding their breath. Then, I felt it! Liam's face lit up. It kicked my hand! That was a good one, Clara laughed. Watching his son's wonder, watching Clara's joy, Ethan felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just about keeping a promise anymore. Somewhere along the way, this had become his family too. That realization should have scared him. Instead, it felt like coming home. November arrived with cold winds and the first snow. Clara's pregnancy was in full swing now, her bump prominent, her waddle pronounced. She complained about her back, her swollen ankles, her inability to tie her own shoes. I'm enormous, she groaned one afternoon, struggling to get comfortable on her couch. You're beautiful, Ethan said without thinking. Clara froze. What? He could backtrack, laugh it off, pretend he'd meant it platonically, but the truth had been building for months now, and he was tired of ignoring it. You're beautiful, he repeated, meeting her eyes. You've been beautiful this whole time, but especially now. Ethan, I look like I swallowed a beach ball. You look like you're growing a person, which you are, and it's beautiful. Clara's eyes filled with tears. The pregnancy hormones made her cry at everything these days, but these felt different. We weren't supposed to do this, she said softly. Do what? This. Feel things. We had an agreement. Keep it simple. Keep it separate. I know. So why does it feel like everything is changing? Ethan moved to sit beside her on the couch. Because maybe it was always going to change. Maybe we were naive to think we could create a life together and not have it affect us. I'm scared, Clara admitted. I'm scared of wanting more and losing it again. I can't survive that twice. Then don't think of it as wanting more. Think of it as letting what's already here become what it's meant to be. And what's it meant to be? I don't know yet, but I know I want to find out. Clara was quiet for a long moment, her hand resting on her bump where the baby was doing what felt like gymnastics. Finally, she spoke. "I've been in love with you since July," she said, her voice barely audible. "Since the day you held my hair back while I threw up in the library bathroom and then went and bought me ginger ale and crackers without me asking. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it was just gratitude or hormones or proximity. But it's not." Ethan's heart was pounding. "Clara, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Because I can't keep pretending this is just some arrangement anymore. Not when you're here every day. Not when Liam is picking out baby clothes with me. Not when this feels more like a family than anything I had with Daniel." The admission hung in the air between them. "I'm terrified too," Ethan said finally. "Terrified of screwing this up, of moving too fast, of not being enough. But I'm more terrified of losing you because I was too scared to be honest." "Honest about what?" "About the fact that I love you too." Clara sucked in a breath. "Really? Really? I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was gradual, or maybe it was all at once. But somewhere between coffee dates and ultrasound appointments and watching you be brave enough to build the life you want, I fell in love with you." They stared at each other, the weight of the confession settling over them like snow. Then Clara started crying in earnest, and Ethan panicked. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. No, you idiot!" Clara was laughing through her tears. "These are happy tears. I'm happy." "Oh, good. That's good." She reached for him, and he met her halfway, wrapping his arms around her as best he could with the bump between them. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other while the baby kicked and the world outside grew dark. When they finally pulled apart, Clara's face was serious. "We have to be careful," she said. "For Liam's sake, and for the baby's. We can't rush into something and have it fall apart." "Agreed." "So we take it slow. We keep building what we have, and we see where it goes." "That sounds reasonable," Clara smiled. "Since when are we reasonable people?" "Good point." They talked late into the night about fears and hopes and all the practical complications of merging their lives. About what it would mean for Liam, for the baby, for the carefully constructed boundaries they'd set and were now dismantling. "I want you there," Clara said at one point. "When the baby comes, in the delivery room, is that weird?" "Nothing about this situation is normal," Ethan said. "But no, it's not weird. I want to be there. And after, I know we said I'd raise her alone, but we were lying to ourselves, both of us." Ethan took her hand. "This baby is going to have all of us, you, me, and Liam. However that looks, we'll figure it out together." Clara squeezed his hand. "Together. I like the sound of that." Over the next few weeks, they told Liam about the change in their relationship. He took it with the rolling adaptability of a child who'd already accepted so much change in his young life. "So you're dating now?" he asked. "Something like that," Ethan said. "Does that mean Clara might move in with us, or we move in with her?" "We haven't figured that out yet." "Okay, can I go back to my game now?" The ease of his acceptance was both relieving and humbling. December brought holiday preparations and the revelation that Clara was having a girl. The technician had confirmed it at the anatomy scan, and Clara had cried happy tears at the news. "A daughter," she kept saying, wonder in her voice. "I'm going to have a daughter." They spent Christmas Eve assembling a crib in Clara's spare bedroom, which she'd slowly been transforming into a nursery. Liam helped, reading instructions with intense concentration, while Ethan struggled with Allen wrenches and incomprehensible diagrams. "This piece doesn't fit," Liam announced. "Yes, it does. You're just holding it upside down." "No, you're looking at it upside down." Clara watched them bicker from her rocking chair, one hand on her bump, a soft smile on her face. "What?" Ethan asked, noticing her expression. "Nothing, just this. All of this." She gestured around the room. 6 months ago, I thought I'd be doing this alone. Setting up a nursery by myself, assembling furniture by myself, preparing for a future that felt more scary than exciting. "And now?" Ethan prompted. "Now I'm watching this man I love argue with his son about crib assembly while our daughter kicks my ribs. It's chaotic and messy and nothing like I planned. Is that good or bad?" "It's perfect," Clara said simply. Later that night, after Liam had fallen asleep on Clara's couch mid-movie, and they'd carefully transferred him to the guest bed, Ethan and Clara stood in the completed nursery. "We need to talk about names," Clara said. "I thought you were stuck on that." "I was, but then I realized I was making it too complicated. Looking for some perfect name with deep meaning when really—" She turned to face him. "Really? I just want something that feels right, something new. Do you have any ideas?" "Actually, yes. Emma." Ethan went still. "I thought that was the name you and Daniel picked." "It was, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't about him. Emma was my grandmother's name. She raised me after my parents' divorce. She taught me that family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up." "Clara, you showed up, Ethan. When I asked the impossible, you showed up. And you keep showing up every single day." Clara placed her hand on her bump. "I want to name her Emma, not after a life that didn't happen, but after the lesson that you don't have to be related to someone to love them completely." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "Emma Cole or Emma Bennett?" "I don't know yet. Maybe both. We don't have to decide right now." They stood in the soft glow of the nightlight, surrounded by tiny clothes and stuffed animals, and all the preparations for a life about to begin. "I keep thinking about what happens when she's born," Clara said quietly. "About all the late nights and exhaustion and crying. About how hard it's going to be." "It will be hard," Ethan agreed. "But you'll be there?" "I'll be there. For the 3 a.m. feedings and the diaper disasters and the complete chaos." He pulled her close, or as close as the bump allowed. "For all of it." Clara tilted her face up to kiss him, soft and sweet and full of promise. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too." In the room down the hall, Liam slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that his small family was growing. And in the nursery, 2 people who'd survived loss and loneliness stood together in the quiet dark, preparing for the beautiful uncertainty of what came next. The holidays passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. January arrived with brutal cold in Clara's 3rd trimester. She was uncomfortable now, her sleep interrupted by constant bathroom trips and the baby's increasingly active movements. "She's tap dancing on my bladder," Clara complained one morning, looking exhausted. Ethan had taken to spending most nights at her house, sleeping on the couch so he could help her when she needed it. Liam had started calling it their second home, which felt more accurate every day. "Have you thought more about after?" Ethan asked one afternoon while they folded tiny onesies. "After what?" "After Emma's born. About living arrangements." Clara was quiet, smoothing out a yellow sleeper with ducks on it. "I've been thinking about it constantly. The logical thing would be for me to stay here, raise her in this house. Keep things separate. But nothing about this has been logical from the start. And the thought of being here alone with a newborn while you're 2 houses away feels wrong. Like we're pretending we're not a family when we clearly are. So what do you want?" "Honestly, I want us all under one roof. You, me, Liam, and Emma. I want the chaos and the noise and the feeling of not being alone." She looked up at him. "Is that crazy?" "No crazier than anything else we've done." They talked through the logistics. Ethan's house was bigger, with more bedrooms and a backyard where kids could play. Claire could sell her house or rent it out. They could combine their lives completely instead of trying to maintain this awkward split existence. "What about Liam?" Clara asked. "This is his home, his space. I don't want him to feel like I'm taking over." Then we ask him. That evening, they sat Liam down for another family meeting. "How would you feel about Clara and the baby moving in with us?" Ethan asked. Liam looked between them, processing. "Like, permanently?" "Yes." "Would Clara be like my stepmom?" The question caught them both off guard. "We haven't talked about marriage," Clara said carefully. "But yes, I suppose that's the role I'd be filling." "And the baby would be my sister?" "Half-sister, technically, but yeah." The Liam was quiet for a long moment, his face serious. Then he shocked them both. "Can I call her Emma my sister instead of half-sister? The half part makes it sound like she doesn't count as much." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Of course you can. And can I help with her? Like, not just sometimes, but actually help? Because I've been reading books and I know babies are hard." "We'd love your help," Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. "Then okay." She can move in. Liam paused. But I get to help set up her room, and I think we should paint it yellow instead of pink, because pink is boring. Just like that, the decision was made. They spent the next month preparing. Clara gave notice at her library job, planning to take maternity leave and decide about returning later. They moved her furniture, merged their households, and created a nursery in what had been Ethan's home office. The room came together in shades of yellow and cream, with clouds painted on the ceiling and a bookshelf already filling with children's books. Liam insisted on contributing a stuffed dinosaur. "Every baby needs a dinosaur," he said seriously. As Clara's due date approached, the nervous energy in the house became palpable. Ethan had the hospital bag packed 3 weeks early. Clara had false labor twice, both times resulting in embarrassed trips home from the hospital. "I'm never going to actually have this baby," she groaned after the second false alarm. "I'm just going to be pregnant forever." "Emma will come when she's ready," Ethan said, rubbing her aching back. "Well, I'm ready now." But Emma had her own timeline. Clara made it past her due date, then a week passed, then 2. The doctor scheduled an induction, and Clara was equal parts relieved and terrified. The night before the induction, they lay in bed together, Clara unable to get comfortable no matter how many pillows Ethan arranged. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of the delivery? Of everything. Of childbirth, of being a mom, of screwing up this tiny person who's counting on me." She turned to face him. "What if I'm not good enough?" "Then you'll figure it out, just like every other parent in the history of the world. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's terrifying and exhausting, and you'll definitely screw up sometimes, but you'll also be amazing." Ethan kissed her forehead. "And you won't be doing it alone. Promise?" "Promise." Clara was quiet for a moment, then placed his hand on her bump where Emma was shifting and turning. "She's going to change everything, isn't she?" "She already has." And it was true. The woman who'd knocked on his door 7 months ago asking the impossible had already changed everything, had taken his carefully controlled life and blown it wide open, had reminded him that love was worth the risk, that family could be built as well as born. Tomorrow, Emma would arrive and change everything again. But tonight, they lay together in the dark, 3 people about to become 4, ready or not for whatever came next. The contraction started at 4 in the morning, 3 hours before they were supposed to be at the hospital for the induction. Ethan woke to Clara gripping his arm, her breathing shallow and controlled in the way the prenatal classes had taught them. "How far apart?" he asked, instantly alert. 5 minutes. They've been going for about an hour." "An hour? Why didn't you wake me?" "I wanted to be sure." Clara winced as another contraction rolled through her. "I'm sure now." Ethan was out of bed immediately, pulling on clothes and mentally running through the checklist they'd rehearsed a dozen times. Hospital bag, phone charger, insurance cards, snacks. He moved through the house in the pre-dawn darkness, gathering everything while trying to keep his hands from shaking. This was happening. This was really happening. He knocked softly on Liam's door. His son was already awake, sitting up in bed with wide eyes. "Is it time?" Liam asked. "It's time. Mrs. Patterson is going to come stay with you, okay? She should be here in 20 minutes. Can I come to the hospital later?" "We'll see how things go. I'll call you as soon as there's news." Liam scrambled out of bed and hugged his father tightly. "Tell Clara she's going to do great." "I will, buddy." By the time Ethan got back to the bedroom, Clara was standing by the window, one hand braced against the wall, breathing through another contraction. The sky outside was just beginning to lighten, painting everything in shades of gray and lavender. "They're getting stronger," she said when she could speak again. "That's good. That means Emma's ready. Or that my body is trying to kill me. Could go either way." Despite everything, Ethan smiled. Even in labor, Clara's dark humor remained intact. The drive to the hospital was surreal. The streets of Maple Falls were empty, the shops dark, the whole town still sleeping while they rushed toward the moment that would change everything. Clara gripped the handle above the passenger door, breathing through contractions that were now coming every 3 minutes. "We're almost there," Ethan said, taking her free hand. I know. Clara squeezed his fingers hard enough to hurt. "I'm scared." "I know, but you can do this. What if something goes wrong? What if..." Then the doctors will handle it. That's why we're going to the hospital. They pulled into the emergency entrance just as another contraction hit. A nurse appeared with a wheelchair, taking in Clara's obvious distress with professional calm. "How far apart are the contractions?" she asked, helping Clara into the chair. 3 minutes, Clara gasped. "And how far along are you?" 40 weeks and 3 days. Let's get you upstairs." The labor and delivery ward was quiet at this early hour, just a few nurses moving between rooms. They were taken to a birthing suite, and Clara changed into a hospital gown while Ethan tried to remember everything they'd learned in the classes. Support her breathing, keep her hydrated, be her advocate if decisions needed to be made. A doctor came in to check Clara's progress, her movements efficient and practiced. "You're at 6 centimeters, she announced, moving right along. 6? Clara looked panicked. Already? Your body knows what it's doing. First babies can take a while, but you're doing great. The hours that followed blurred together in a haze of contractions and breathing exercises, and Ethan feeling utterly helpless as Clara worked through pain he couldn't imagine. She gripped his hand until his fingers went numb, breathed through contractions that seemed to come with barely any break between them, and refused the epidural twice before finally accepting it at 8 centimeters. "I wanted to do it naturally," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You've been doing it naturally for hours. There's no shame in getting help." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one failing. You're not failing. You're bringing our daughter into the world. That's the opposite of failing." The epidural brought relief, and Clara was finally able to rest between contractions. Ethan sat beside her bed, holding her hand and watching the monitor track Emma's heartbeat in steady, reassuring peaks. "Thank you," Clara said softly. "For what?" "For being here. For not running away when things got hard. Where else would I be? Most men would have bolted months ago. This whole situation is insane." "Maybe, but it's our insane." Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And I wouldn't change it." Clara's eyes filled with fresh tears, though whether from emotion or hormones, he couldn't tell. "I love you. I love you too." At noon, the doctor checked Clara again and announced it was time to push. The calm atmosphere in the room shifted immediately, nurses appearing with equipment and positioning lights and transforming the space into something clinical and focused. "Ready?" the doctor asked Clara. "No, but let's do it anyway." What followed was the most intense hour of Ethan's life. Clara pushed with a strength he didn't know she possessed, her face red with effort, her hand crushing his as she bore down again and again. He whispered encouragement, wiped her forehead, and felt utterly inadequate to the magnitude of what she was doing. "I can't," Clara gasped after the 10th push. "I can't do this anymore." "Yes, you can. You're so close." "I can't, Ethan. I can't." "One more push. Just one more." "I see the head," the doctor said. "Clara, give me one big push. Come on." Clara gathered herself, took a deep breath, and pushed with everything she had left. The room filled with the sound of a baby crying, high and indignant and absolutely perfect. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, though they already knew. They placed Emma on Clara's chest, and time seemed to stop. She was tiny and red and covered in vernix, her eyes scrunched shut against the bright lights, her fists waving as she cried. Clara cradled her against her skin, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, Emma," she whispered. "Hi, baby girl. I'm your mama." Ethan couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at the impossibly small person who had just entered the world and changed everything in an instant. "Do you want to cut the cord?" the doctor asked him. He did, his hands shaking as he made the cut that separated Emma from the only world she'd ever known. Then the nurses took her to clean her up and check her vitals, and Clara reached for Ethan's hand. "We did it," she said, exhausted and radiant. "You did it. That was all you." "No, we did it together." When they brought Emma back, swaddled in a pink and white striped blanket with a tiny hat on her head, the nurse placed her in Ethan's arms. He'd held newborns before. He'd held Liam when he was this small. But somehow this felt different. This was the baby he'd helped create, the life that had started with an impossible request on a rainy October night. Emma opened her eyes, dark blue and unfocused, and looked up at him. In that moment, every doubt, every fear, every complication of their situation melted away. This was his daughter. Not in the legal sense, not in the traditional sense, but in every way that mattered. "Hi, Emma," he said softly. "I'm—" He paused, unsure what to call himself. "You're her daddy," Clara said firmly. "Tell her you're her daddy." "I'm your daddy," Ethan finished, his voice breaking, "and I'm so happy you're here." They spent the next hour in a quiet bubble, just the three of them, learning Emma's face and counting her tiny fingers and marveling at the miracle of her existence. Then Ethan called Liam. "She's here," he said when his son answered. "Emma's here, and she's perfect. Can I come see her? Mrs. Patterson is going to bring you to the hospital in about an hour. Is that okay? That's forever from now." "I know, buddy, but we'll be waiting." When Liam arrived, he was clutching the stuffed dinosaur he'd placed in Emma's nursery and trying very hard to act calm despite the excitement radiating from every pore. "Can I hold her?" he asked immediately. "Wash your hands first," Clara said, but she was smiling. Ethan helped Liam settle into the chair and carefully placed Emma in his arms, making sure he supported her head properly. Liam stared down at his baby sister with an expression of pure wonder. "She's so small," he breathed. "Her whole hand is smaller than my thumb." "You were this small once," Ethan said. "Really?" "Really, though you had more hair." Emma yawned, a tiny jaw-cracking movement that made Liam giggle. "She yawned! Did you see that?" "We saw," Clara said, and Ethan heard the emotion in her voice. This was her family. Not the one she'd planned with Daniel, not the one she'd imagined in all those lonely years, but the one she had. Messy and unconventional and absolutely real. They stayed in the hospital for 2 days while Clara recovered and they learned the basics of caring for a newborn. The nurses taught them how to swaddle, how to recognize Emma's different cries, how to navigate the terrifying world of diaper changes and feeding schedules. "She's eating well," the lactation consultant said, watching Emma nurse. "You're doing great, Mama." Clara looked exhausted but pleased. "It doesn't feel like I'm doing great. It feels like I'm making it up as I go." "That's parenthood. Everyone's making it up." The night before they went home, Clara woke Ethan at 2 in the morning. He'd been dozing in the chair beside her bed and he jolted awake in a panic. "What's wrong? Is Emma okay?" "She's fine. She's sleeping." Clara was sitting up, holding Emma against her chest. I needed to tell you something." "What?" "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For you to realize this is too much, too complicated, too hard." Her voice was barely a whisper. "And I need you to promise me something. Anything. If you're going to leave, do it now. Before Emma knows you, before Liam gets more attached, before I—" She couldn't finish. Ethan moved to sit on the edge of her bed, careful not to jostle Emma. "I'm not leaving," he said firmly. "Not now, not ever. Clara, I know this is scary. I know you've been hurt before and you're waiting for it to happen again. But I'm not Daniel." "I know that. Do you? Because it seems like you're still expecting me to disappear like he did." "He didn't disappear. He died. And I'm still here, very much alive, and very much committed to this family we're building." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've already lost everything once. I know what it's like to have my whole world ripped away. And I'm choosing this. Choosing you, choosing Emma, choosing all the chaos and exhaustion and beautiful mess that comes with it. Even when Emma's screaming at 3 a.m., especially then. Even when I'm hormonal and unreasonable. You're not unreasonable. You're scared, and that's okay." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. Emma nestled between them. "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do. And Emma deserves both of us." They sat like that in the dim hospital room. The only sound Emma's soft breathing and the beep of monitors in the hallway. Outside, the world was dark and sleeping. Inside, a family was being born. Bringing Emma home was both wonderful and terrifying. Ethan carried her car seat like it contained the crown jewels, taking corners slowly and stopping at every yellow light. Clara sat in the back seat beside Emma, watching her sleep with an intensity that suggested she might never look away. Liam had helped Mrs. Patterson decorate the house with a banner that read, "Welcome Home, Emma," in slightly crooked letters. He met them at the door, bouncing with excitement. "Can I hold her again?" "Let's get her inside first," Ethan said. They gathered in the living room, and Ethan carefully lifted Emma from her car seat. She was awake now, her dark eyes open and alert, taking in the new environment. "This is your home," Clara told her softly. "This is where you're going to grow up." The first night home was brutal. Emma woke every 2 hours, crying with the intensity that seemed impossible from such a small body. Clara fed her while Ethan changed diapers and made sure Clara stayed hydrated and tried not to panic at how completely their lives had changed. By 4 a.m., they were both zombies. "I don't remember Liam being this difficult," Ethan said, walking Emma in circles around the living room while she fussed. "All babies are different. The book said so." The book lied. The book said babies sleep. The book said babies sleep eventually. It didn't specify when. Despite the exhaustion, they laughed. What else could they do? The days that followed blurred together in a haze of feeding and changing and brief moments of sleep stolen whenever Emma allowed it. Liam helped where he could, entertaining Emma with funny faces and gentle songs when she was awake. Clara's mother flew in for a week, clucking over her granddaughter and cooking meals that actually got eaten. "You're doing wonderfully," she told Clara one afternoon, watching her daughter nurse Emma. "I know it doesn't feel like it, but you are." "I feel like I'm drowning." "That's normal. The first few weeks are survival mode. You just have to get through them." "When does it get easier?" "Oh, honey, it doesn't get easier. It just gets different." But slowly, incrementally, they found their rhythm. Emma started sleeping for longer stretches at night. Clara's body healed from the delivery. They learned to read Emma's cues, to distinguish between her hungry cry and her tired cry and her "I just want to be held" cry. One morning, 6 weeks after Emma's birth, Ethan woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the house completely quiet. He sat up in a panic, convinced something was wrong, only to find Clara already awake beside him. "She slept for 5 hours straight," Clara whispered, as if speaking too loudly might break the spell. 5 hours? 5 whole hours. I actually feel almost human. They lay there in the quiet, savoring the peace, until Emma's cry came through the baby monitor. But even that felt less overwhelming somehow. They'd survived the worst of it. They'd made it through. As winter melted into spring, Emma began to change from a helpless newborn into a person with preferences and personality. She smiled at 8 weeks, a gummy grin that made all the sleepless nights worth it. She cooed and babbled, tracking movement with her eyes and reaching for the mobile above her crib. "She's getting so big," Liam observed one afternoon, lying on the floor beside Emma during tummy time. "Pretty soon she'll be crawling everywhere." "Not for a few more months," Ethan said. "But when she does, I'm going to teach her cool stuff, like how to catch frogs and climb trees. Maybe start with something easier, like rolling over." Watching Liam with Emma never failed to move Ethan. His son was patient and gentle, talking to her in a soft voice and showing her his favorite books, even though she was far too young to understand. He'd adapted to the chaos of a new baby with remarkable grace, only occasionally complaining about the noise or the disruption to their routines. One evening, after Emma was asleep, Liam appeared in the doorway of Ethan's bedroom where he and Clara were finally relaxing. "Can I ask you something?" Liam said. "Of course, buddy." "Are you and Clara going to get married?" The question hung in the air. They'd talked about it privately but hadn't made any decisions. "We haven't decided yet," Clara said honestly. "Why do you ask?" "Because my friend Jake said you have to be married to be a real family, and I told him that was stupid because we're already a family. But then I thought maybe you wanted to get married and just hadn't done it yet." Ethan and Clara exchanged glances. "Do you want us to get married?" Ethan asked. Liam shrugged, trying for casual but failing. "I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it might be nice. Then Clara would officially be Emma's mom and my stepmom, and Emma would officially be my sister." "She's already officially your sister," Clara said. "Marriage doesn't change that. But it would make it more official, legal and stuff." After Liam went to bed, Clara turned to Ethan. "He makes a good point," she said, "about it being more official. About all of it. We're living together, raising a child together, building a life together. Maybe it's time to make it permanent." Ethan's heart was racing. "Are you proposing to me?" "Maybe." "Would you say yes?" "I might. Depends on the proposal." Clara sat up, suddenly serious. Ethan Cole, I know this whole thing started in the weirdest way possible. I know I knocked on your door with an insane request and you somehow said yes. I know we've done everything backwards and complicated and nothing like a normal couple would. But, he prompted, but I love you. I love the life we've built, the family we've created. I love watching you with Emma, seeing you be the father she needs, and the partner I didn't know I was looking for. Clara took his hand. So yes, I'm proposing. Will you marry me? Ethan pulled her close, mindful of the baby monitor on the nightstand and the sleeping infant 2 rooms away. Yes, he said simply. Yes, I'll marry you. They kissed, soft and sweet, and somewhere in the house Emma stirred but didn't wake. They had time to plan a wedding, time to merge their lives even more completely than they already had, time to build the future they'd stumbled into creating. The next morning, they told Liam over breakfast. We're getting married, Clara announced. Liam looked up from his cereal, a grin spreading across his face. Really? Really? Yes. He pumped his fist in the air. Can I be in the wedding? You'll be the best man, Ethan said. What about Emma? She'll be the flower girl, once she's old enough to walk. But the wedding's going to be soon, right? You're not going to wait forever? Clara laughed. We'll figure it out. They planned a small ceremony for late summer, just close friends and family in the backyard of the house they now all called home. Clara's parents came, awkward but trying. Ethan's old friend from the garage stood as a witness, and Liam took his role as best man with solemn importance, holding the rings in his pocket and practicing not dropping them for weeks beforehand. The day of the wedding was perfect, warm and sunny, with a breeze that rustled the decorations they'd strung between the trees. Emma, now 5 months old, sat in her bouncy seat wearing a tiny white dress and watching the proceedings with wide-eyed interest. Clara walked down the makeshift aisle in a simple cream dress, no veil, no elaborate train. She didn't need it. She was beautiful in her simplicity, in the joy radiating from her face. They'd written their own vows, and when it came time to speak them, Ethan's voice was steady. Clara, you changed my life the night you knocked on my door. You reminded me that it's okay to want more than just survival, that taking risks can lead to incredible rewards. You gave me a daughter and a future I never imagined. I promise to love you, support you, and show up every single day for the rest of our lives. Clara's eyes glistened. Ethan, you taught me that family isn't always about biology or traditional paths. You showed me that love can be built on honesty, patience, and the willingness to try something impossible. You gave me hope when I'd given up on it. I promise to cherish you, trust you, and build this beautiful, messy life with you for as long as we both shall live. When they kissed, Liam cheered and Emma let out a squeal that might have been approval or might have been gas, but everyone laughed anyway. The reception was casual, just cake and champagne and music playing from speakers in the garage. They danced in the grass, Emma passed between various arms, Liam showing off the tie he'd picked out himself. As the sun set and guests began to leave, Ethan found himself standing at the edge of the yard watching his family. Liam was teaching Emma how to clap, even though she couldn't quite coordinate her hands yet. Clara was laughing at something Liam said, her head thrown back, utterly free. This was his life now, this beautiful, complicated, unconventional life. Clara appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his. What are you thinking about? She asked. About how none of this was part of the plan. Is that good or bad? It's perfect, Ethan said, and meant it with his whole heart. The honeymoon phase lasted exactly 3 weeks. Not that the love disappeared or the commitment wavered, but the reality of merging 2 lives into one household with a baby and a 10-year-old hit harder than either of them had anticipated. Small things became friction points. Clara reorganized the kitchen cabinets, and Ethan couldn't find anything for a week. Ethan's habit of leaving his work boots by the door drove Clara crazy. They bickered about whose turn it was to do laundry, about whether Emma needed another layer of clothing, about what constituted an appropriate bedtime for Liam. I'm not trying to parent him, Clara said one evening after a disagreement about screen time. I'm just saying 2 hours of video games on a school night seems excessive. And I'm saying he's 10 years old and doing well in school. Let him have some fun. I am letting him have fun. I'm just suggesting maybe an hour and a half instead of 2. That's still you trying to parent him. The words came out harsher than Ethan intended, and he saw Clara flinch. I'm sorry, she said quietly. You're right. He's your son. I'll stay out of it. That's not what I meant. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. This is all new territory for me. Sharing parenting decisions, having someone else's opinion about how to raise him. I know, and I'm trying to find the balance between being involved and overstepping. Clara looked exhausted, and Ethan realized Emma had been up half the night teething. Maybe we should talk about this when we're both less tired. Yeah, good idea. But the conversation gnawed at Ethan. That night, after Clara had gone to bed early and Liam was asleep, he sat in the kitchen with a beer he didn't really want and thought about Rebecca. She would have known exactly how to navigate this. She would have had opinions about Liam's screen time and bedtime and diet, and they would have figured it out together because they'd been building that partnership from the beginning. With Clara, everything felt like negotiation, not because she was unreasonable, but because they were trying to create something without a blueprint. The next morning, Ethan woke early and made pancakes. It was his apology language, the way he said sorry without words. When Clara came into the kitchen with Emma on her hip, she took in the spread on the table and gave him a tired smile. Peace offering? She asked. Something like that. I was in jerk last night. You weren't a jerk, you were honest. Clara settled Emma into her high chair and started cutting up banana pieces. And you were right. I need to be more careful about boundaries with Liam. No, you need to feel like you can have opinions about our kids, both of them. But Ethan sat down across from her. You're not just the woman I married. You're Liam's stepmom and Emma's mom, and that means you get a say in how we raise them. Even when we disagree? Especially when we disagree. That's how we figure out what works. Clara reached across the table and took his hand. We're going to mess this up sometimes, aren't we? Probably a lot, but we'll figure it out. They ate breakfast together, Emma making a spectacular mess with her banana, and the tension from the night before eased. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and somehow that felt more solid than perfect ever could. As Emma approached her first birthday, the differences in their parenting styles became more apparent. Clara was cautious, researching every milestone and every potential danger. Ethan was more relaxed, having survived Liam's toddler years and learned that kids were more resilient than they seemed. She's fine, Ethan said one afternoon when Clara panicked because Emma had put a leaf in her mouth at the park. She could choke or it could be poisonous. It's a maple leaf. She's fine. You don't know that. Clara. Ethan gently removed the soggy leaf from Emma's grasp and wiped her mouth. See? Fine. No choking, no poisoning, no disaster. Clara took a shaky breath. I know I'm being overprotective. You're being a first-time mom. It's normal. You weren't like this with Liam. I was exactly like this with Liam. Ask my old landlord about the time I called 911 because he sneezed weird. Despite herself, Clara laughed. Really? Really. Turned out he had a piece of lint in his nose. The paramedics were very understanding. Emma, oblivious to the drama she'd caused, crawled toward a pile of leaves with single-minded determination. Liam, who'd been playing on the swings, jogged over. Can I take her down the slide? He asked. The baby slide, Clara said immediately. I was thinking the regular one. I'll hold her. Liam, she's not even one yet. But she loves going fast. Watch. Liam scooped up his sister and spun in a gentle circle. Emma shrieked with laughter, her whole face lighting up. Clara looked at Ethan, clearly torn between caution and the evidence of Emma's joy. Baby slide, Ethan said. Compromise. Liam grinned. Deal. Watching his son carry his daughter toward the playground equipment, Ethan felt Clara relax beside him. He's really good with her, she said. He loves her, and she adores him. It was true. Emma's face transformed whenever Liam entered a room. He was her favorite person, the one who could make her laugh when she was fussy, who knew exactly how to play peekaboo to get the biggest giggles. Do you think about having more? Clara asked suddenly. The question caught Ethan off guard. More kids? Yeah, I know Emma wasn't exactly planned in the traditional sense, but now that we're married and everything's settled, she trailed off. Never mind. Forget I asked. No, it's a fair question. Ethan thought about it. I don't know. Part of me thinks we have a good thing going. Liam's getting older and more independent. Emma's past the worst of the baby stage. Adding another one would reset the clock. But I also love being a dad, and I love watching you be a mom. He looked at her. What do you want? I don't know either. Sometimes I look at Emma and think how perfect she is, and maybe we should just be grateful for what we have. But other times I wonder if she'd like a sibling closer to her age, someone to grow up with. We don't have to decide right now. No, but we should think about it. They sat on the park bench watching their kids play, the question hanging between them, not urgent but present. Emma's first birthday party was a chaotic affair with too many balloons and a smash cake that ended up everywhere except in Emma's mouth. She was delighted by the attention, the presents, the singing, even if she had no concept of what a birthday actually meant. Liam had helped plan the party, insisting on a dinosaur theme even though Emma was too young to care. She loves dinosaurs, he'd argued. She's 10 months old. She doesn't know what dinosaurs are. She will when she's older. This way we have pictures to show her. So they had dinosaur plates and dinosaur decorations, and a cake shaped like a stegosaurus. Clara's parents came, and Ethan's friend from the garage brought his family. The house was full of noise and laughter and the beautiful chaos of celebration. Later, after everyone had gone home and Emma was asleep in her crib surrounded by new toys, Ethan found Clara in the nursery just watching their daughter sleep. Hard to believe it's been a year, she said softly. Hardest year of my life, Ethan said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. And the best? And the best. Clara leaned back against him. I keep thinking about that night I knocked on your door. How terrified I was. How certain I was that you'd say no. What would you have done if I had? Probably gone to a sperm bank, been a single mom, built a different life. She turned to face him. But I'm so glad I don't have to know. This life, this family, it's better than anything I imagined. As fall arrived and Emma started taking her first wobbly steps, new challenges emerged. She was into everything, pulling books off shelves, opening cabinets, climbing furniture with a fearlessness that gave Clara heart palpitations. She's going to kill herself, Clara said, pulling Emma away from the stairs for the third time in 10 minutes. We need a baby gate, Ethan said. We have a baby gate. She figured out how to open it. Already? She's terrifyingly smart. Liam, now 11 and in 5th grade, took his role as big brother seriously. He baby-proofed his room, keeping small toys and anything dangerous out of Emma's reach. He learned to watch her when Clara needed to cook dinner or take a shower, entertaining her with songs and games that held her attention. You're really good at this, Clara told him one afternoon, watching him stack blocks for Emma to knock down over and over without complaint. Liam shrugged. She's my sister. It's my job. Not all big brothers are this patient. Yeah, well, not all big brothers have a dad who taught them how to be patient. Liam glanced at her. And not all of them get a stepmom who's this nice. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, Liam. For what? For letting me be part of your family, for not resenting Emma or me for changing everything. Why would I resent you? You make Dad happy. And Emma's pretty cool, even if she does drool a lot. The simplicity of children's wisdom never ceased to amaze Clara. But not everything was simple. As Emma's personality emerged, so did the questions about her future, about how to explain her family structure when she got older, about what to tell her about how she came to be. We have to be honest with her, Clara said one night after Emma was in bed. Age appropriate, but honest. Agreed. But when? When do we start that conversation? I don't know. Maybe when she starts asking questions? They were feeling their way through uncharted territory, trying to build a framework for conversations they'd never had before. The question came sooner than expected. Emma was 2.5, verbal and curious about everything, when she pointed at a family photo on the mantel. Mama, Dada, Liam, Emma, she said, naming everyone. That's right, sweetie, Clara said. Why Emma's face different? Clara and Ethan exchanged glances. Emma had darker hair than Liam, different features, a different build. It was subtle, but apparently noticeable even to a toddler. Because everybody looks different, Clara said carefully. You look like Mama and Dada, and Liam looks like Dada and his first mama. First mama? And there it was. The door opening to explanations they'd known were coming but hadn't fully prepared for. Ethan knelt down to Emma's level. Liam's first mama was named Rebecca. She was my wife before I married your mama. She died when Liam was very little, before you were born. Emma processed this with the matter-of-fact acceptance of a toddler. Where'd she go? She's gone, sweetheart, but Liam remembers her, and we have pictures. Oh, okay. Emma lost interest and toddled off to play with her blocks. The existential conversation apparently settled in her young mind. But for Liam, who'd been listening from the doorway, it wasn't settled at all. Can we talk? He asked that evening. They sat in the living room, just the three of them, while Emma slept, and Liam looked more serious than Ethan had seen him in years. I don't really remember Mom anymore, Liam said quietly. Sometimes I think I do, but then I realize I'm just remembering photos or stories you've told me. Ethan's chest tightened. That's okay, buddy. You were so young when she died. But it's not okay. She's my mom, and I should remember her. Liam's voice cracked. What kind of son forgets his own mother? The kind who was 3 years old when she died, Clara said gently. Liam, you're not a bad son. You're a kid who experienced a terrible loss at an age when memory doesn't stick well. But what if I forget her completely? What if someday I can't even picture her face without looking at photos? Ethan moved to sit beside his son, pulling him close. Then we'll make sure you have the photos, and the stories, and everything I can give you to keep her memory alive. Do you still miss her? Liam asked. Every day, but differently than I used to. Time doesn't erase the loss, but it makes room for new love. Ethan looked at Clara. Loving your stepmom doesn't mean I stopped loving your mom. And you loving Clara doesn't mean you're betraying Rebecca's memory. I do love Clara, Liam said, and Clara's eyes filled with tears. She's been like a mom to me for 2 years now, but sometimes I feel guilty about it. You shouldn't, Clara said. Your first mom would want you to be happy, to have people who love you. I'm not trying to replace her, Liam. I'm just trying to be here for you now. Liam nodded, wiping at his eyes. Can I ask you something? Of course. When Emma gets older and asks about her family, are you going to tell her the whole truth? About how you asked Dad to help you have a baby? It was a fair question, and one they debated privately. Yes, Clara said. We're going to tell her the truth in a way she can understand. That I wanted a baby very much. That your dad was kind enough to help me, and that we fell in love while we were creating her. What if she feels weird about it? Then we'll help her process those feelings. But I hope she'll understand that love comes in lots of forms, and families can be built in lots of ways. Liam was quiet for a moment, then said something that surprised them both. I think it's kind of cool, actually, that you chose each other and chose to make Emma. Most kids just happen by accident, but Emma was really, really wanted. You were really wanted too, Ethan said firmly. I know, but it's different with Emma. You both wanted her before she even existed. You made her on purpose, together. Liam smiled slightly. That's pretty special. Later, after Liam had gone to bed, Ethan and Clara sat on the back porch in the cool night air. He's growing up so fast, Clara said. Too fast. Are we doing this right? All of this? I have no idea. But I think we're doing our best, and that has to count for something. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you ever regret it, saying yes when I knocked on your door? Never. Do you regret asking? Not for a second. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the crickets and the distant sound of a car passing. Inside, their children slept peacefully, unaware of the complicated love and history that had brought them all together. As Emma approached 3 years old, she became more aware of family dynamics. She noticed that some of her friends at preschool had 2 parents, some had 1, some had grandparents raising them, some had 2 moms or 2 dads. Teacher says family's all different, she announced one day at dinner. That's right, Clara said. Families come in all shapes and sizes. We got Mama, Dada, Liam, and Emma. That's 4. That's right. And we got Grandma Carol and Grandma Susan and Grandpa Mike. Emma counted on her fingers, getting confused halfway through. That's lots. Watching her daughter try to categorize her family made Clara's heart swell. Emma didn't know yet about the unconventional beginning of her existence. She just knew she was loved, she was safe, and she belonged. The conversation about Emma's origins happened gradually, in pieces over years. At 4, she understood that she grew in Mama's belly. At 5, she understood that Dada helped make her. At 6, she asked more pointed questions about how babies were made, and they gave her age-appropriate answers. But it wasn't until Emma was 7 that she really understood. They were at the park, watching Emma play on the monkey bars, when another mother made a comment about how Emma looked just like Clara. "Actually, she looks like both of us," Ethan said mildly. The woman laughed. "Well, of course, I just meant she has her mother's eyes." After the woman walked away, Emma approached with a thoughtful expression. "I don't have your eyes, Mama. They're different colors." "You have your own beautiful eyes," Clara said, "but where did I get them from?" This was it, the moment they'd been preparing for. "Let's sit down," Ethan said, guiding them to a bench. "We want to explain something to you about our family." They told her the story as honestly as they could, about how Mama had wanted a baby very much, about how Dada had agreed to help, about how they'd fallen in love while creating her. Emma listened with the serious concentration of a 7-year-old processing big information. "So you're my real dad," she said to Ethan, "and you're my real mom," she said to Clara. "But you weren't married when I was born?" "That's right. We got married when you were a baby." "Why?" "Because we loved each other and wanted to be a family." Emma thought about this. "Did you know you were going to love each other when you decided to make me?" "No," Clara admitted. "We were just friends helping each other. The love came later." "Huh." Emma swung her legs, thinking, "So I'm the reason you fell in love?" "In a way, yes," Ethan said. "Creating you brought us together. But we fell in love with each other for who we are, not just because of you." "That's good, because if it was just because of me, that would be a lot of pressure." Emma hopped off the bench. "Can I go back to playing now?" They let her go, watching her run back to the playground with the resilience of childhood. "That went better than I expected," Clara said. "She's an amazing kid." "She is. We did good." As the years passed, their family continued to evolve. Liam entered high school, tall and confident, a protective big brother who drove Emma to dance class and helped her with homework. Emma grew into a bright, stubborn, joyful child who kept them all on their toes. And Ethan and Clara grew together, their love deepening with time and shared experience. They fought about money and parenting and whose turn it was to clean the bathroom. They laughed over inside jokes and private moments. They built a life that was messy and real and utterly theirs. One evening, when Emma was 8 and Liam was 16, Clara found Ethan in the garage working on a vintage motorcycle he'd been restoring for years. "I'm pregnant," she said without preamble. Ethan dropped his wrench. "What?" "I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. I wasn't sure if I should tell you yet, but I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. We weren't trying." "I know, but apparently we weren't preventing very well either." Clara bit her lip. "Are you happy? Upset? I can't read your face." Ethan stood up, wiping his hands on a rag, his mind racing. Another baby, another person to love, to raise, to worry about. Another chance to get it right and wrong in equal measure. "I'm terrified," he said honestly, "and happy, and wondering how we're going to manage with Liam about to leave for college, and Emma just getting to an age where she's self-sufficient." "So, normal parental feelings." "Yeah, normal." Ethan pulled her close. "We're really doing this again?" "Looks like it." They stood in the garage surrounded by tools and half-finished projects, contemplating a future they hadn't planned but would embrace anyway. Because that's what they did. They took the unexpected and made it beautiful. They told the kids at dinner that weekend, Liam home from a friend's house, and Emma chattering about her dance recital. Ethan and Clara exchanged glances across the table, and he gave her a small nod. "We have some news," Clara said, setting down her fork. Liam looked up immediately, teenager instincts kicking in. "What kind of news?" "The good kind, we hope." Clara took a breath. "I'm pregnant. You're both going to have another sibling." Emma's eyes went wide. "Really? A baby?" "Really. Can it be a sister? I want a sister." "We don't know yet, sweetie. It's too early to tell." Liam was quieter, his expression thoughtful. "When are you due?" "Late March? Early April? That's right before I graduate." Liam set down his own fork. "Are you guys okay? I mean, this wasn't planned, right?" "No, it wasn't planned," Ethan admitted. "But we're okay. Surprised, but okay. I'm going to be a big sister." Emma was already planning, her imagination running wild. I can teach the baby everything, like how to tie shoes and how to draw, and the baby won't be able to do any of that for a while, Clara said, smiling despite her nerves. Babies are pretty helpless at first. I remember, Liam said quietly, and Ethan knew he was thinking about Emma's infancy. It's a lot of work. It is, which is why we wanted to tell you both now, so you know what to expect. Emma was bouncing in her seat with excitement, but Liam's reaction was more measured. Later, after Emma had gone to bed still talking about baby names, Liam found Ethan in the living room. Can I ask you something? Liam said, settling into the armchair. Always. Are you scared? Ethan considered lying, giving his son the confident answer a parent was supposed to give. But they'd built this family on honesty. Terrified, he admitted. I'm 42 years old. By the time this baby graduates high school, I'll be 60. That's assuming everything goes well, which at our age isn't guaranteed. But you're happy about it too? Yeah, I am. Your stepmom and I, we've built something good here. Another kid will change things, make them harder, but it'll also make them richer. Ethan looked at his son. What about you? How are you really feeling? Liam was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, part of me is excited. I love being a big brother. Emma's pretty great, even when she's annoying. And the other part? The other part is worried about you guys. About Clara specifically. She's not as young as she was with Emma, and pregnancy is risky. What if something goes wrong? The fear in his son's voice cut deep. Liam had already lost one mother. The thought of losing another, even if Clara was technically his stepmother, was clearly weighing on him. We're being careful, Ethan assured him. Clara's already seeing her doctor regularly. They're monitoring everything closely. But you can't guarantee she'll be okay. No, I can't. But I can promise that we're doing everything right and that whatever happens, we'll face it together. Liam nodded, but the worry didn't leave his eyes. The pregnancy was harder than Clara's first. Morning sickness lasted well into the second trimester, and she was exhausted in a way she hadn't been with Emma. At 38, her body was less resilient, less forgiving of the demands being placed on it. I feel ancient, she said one afternoon, struggling to get comfortable on the couch while Emma did homework at the coffee table. You're not ancient, Emma said seriously. Ancient is like 100 years old. You're only 38. Thanks, sweetheart. Very reassuring. Ethan took on more of the household duties, doing most of the cooking and cleaning while Clara rested. Liam helped where he could between school and his part-time job at the hardware store. Even Emma pitched in, bringing Clara water and crackers without being asked. The 20-week ultrasound brought both relief and revelation. The baby was healthy, developing normally, and very clearly a boy. A boy, Clara said, staring at the screen with wonder. We're having a boy. Emma, who'd been hoping for a sister, processed this news with 8-year-old pragmatism. Boys are okay too, I guess. At least he can play with Liam's old toys. They started preparing the nursery, painting the walls a soft sage green, and assembling furniture that seemed much heavier than Ethan remembered. His back protested the effort, reminding him that he wasn't in his 20s anymore. We're getting old, he said to Clara one evening, rubbing his lower back. Speak for yourself. I'm in my prime. Your prime involves falling asleep at 7 p.m. every night. Growing a human is exhausting work. Clara patted her growing belly. You try it sometime. As fall turned to winter, they settled on a name, Owen. It meant young warrior, which felt fitting for a baby joining their unconventional family. He'd need to be a warrior to keep up with Emma's energy and navigate the complexity of their family story. Liam was preparing for college, filling out applications and stressing over essays. He'd been accepted to Oregon State, just 2 hours away, planning to study engineering. Ethan was proud and heartbroken in equal measure, watching his firstborn prepare to leave. You'll still come home on weekends, right? Emma asked Liam one evening. Some weekends, but I'll have studying and probably a job. But you'll come home to see me and the baby? Of course I will, Squirt. Liam ruffled her hair. You're stuck with me as a brother forever. The comment made Ethan think about family, about the bonds they'd created that went beyond biology. Liam could have resented Clara and Emma for changing his family structure, could have pulled away when things got complicated. Instead, he'd embraced them fully, becoming the kind of big brother every kid deserved. Christmas that year was bittersweet. It was Liam's last before college, Clara was visibly pregnant and uncomfortable, and Emma was old enough to sense the changes coming. They took family photos in front of the tree, all four of them plus the promise of Owen growing beneath Clara's sweater. "Everyone smile," Ethan said, setting the timer on the camera. "Owen can't smile yet," Emma pointed out. "He doesn't even have a face." "He has a face, sweetie. We just can't see it yet." "That's weird." The photo captured them mid-laugh, imperfect and real, a family in transition. January brought complications. Clara's blood pressure started climbing, and her doctor put her on modified bed rest. She was frustrated, confined to the couch while the world moved on without her, but she complied because Owen's health depended on it. "I hate this," she said one afternoon while Ethan folded laundry and Emma colored quietly nearby. "I hate being useless." "You're not useless. You're growing our son. I'm lying on a couch getting fat while you do everything. You're following doctor's orders and keeping yourself and Owen safe. That's not useless." But Ethan could see the toll it was taking on her, the restless energy with nowhere to go, the guilt of watching him shoulder everything. He tried to reassure her, but the truth was he was exhausted too. Working full-time, managing the household, caring for Emma, and worrying about Clara and Owen left him running on fumes. Liam noticed during one of his weekend visits home. "Dad, you look terrible," he said bluntly. "Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. I'm serious. When's the last time you slept more than 5 hours?" Ethan couldn't remember. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're going to burn out. And then where will we be?" Liam set down his backpack. "I'm staying home this weekend. I'll handle Emma and the house stuff. You're going to sleep." "Liam, you have studying. I can study here. Dad, let me help, please." The sincerity in his son's voice broke through Ethan's stubborn independence. "Okay, thank you." That weekend, Liam took Emma to the park, made meals, did laundry, and let Ethan sleep for 12 hours straight. When Ethan finally emerged from the bedroom, he found Liam in the kitchen making breakfast while Emma set the table. "You didn't have to do all this," Ethan said. "Yeah, I did. You've been taking care of all of us for years. Let us take care of you for once." The simple statement made Ethan's throat tight. His son had grown into a remarkable young man, and he hadn't even fully noticed it happening. February brought another scare. Clara started having contractions at 34 weeks, too early for Owen to be born safely. They rushed to the hospital, Ethan gripping her hand while Liam stayed home with Emma. "It's too soon," Clara kept saying. "He's not ready." "They're going to stop it," Ethan assured her, though his own fear was choking him. "They have medicine for this." The doctors managed to stop the contractions, but they kept Clara overnight for observation. Ethan stayed with her, sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair and waking every time a monitor beeped. "I'm scared," Clara whispered in the darkness. "Me too. What if I can't do this? What if my body can't handle it?" "Your body has already done amazing things. It created Emma. It's creating Owen. Trust it." "I'm not as young as I was with Emma." "No, but you're stronger than you think." Clara was released the next day with strict orders to continue bed rest until Owen decided to make his appearance. The weeks that followed were tense, everyone walking on eggshells, waiting for labor to start. It finally happened 3 weeks later, 3 weeks before Clara's due date, but far enough along that the doctors felt confident Owen would be okay. Clara's water broke at 2 in the morning, and this time the contractions came fast and hard. "This is different from Emma," Clara gasped as they rushed to the hospital. "Everything's moving faster." "Second babies often do," Ethan said, driving carefully despite his urgency. "How do you know that?" "I read all the books too." At the hospital, things progressed rapidly. Clara was already at 7 centimeters when they checked her, and the doctor said it would be soon. "I need Liam and Emma here," Clara said between contractions. "I want them to meet their brother right away." Ethan called home, and Liam promised to bring Emma as soon as visiting hours started. In the meantime, Ethan stayed by Clara's side, coaching her breathing and feeling utterly inadequate to the task at hand. Owen Thomas Cole was born at 6:47 a.m., weighing 6 pounds and 8 ounces, with a head full of dark hair and lungs that announced his arrival to the entire maternity ward. He's perfect, Clara sobbed as they placed him on her chest. Ethan, he's perfect. And he was. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a scrunched up face that looked perpetually surprised, and a grip that latched onto Ethan's finger with surprising strength. Hi, Owen, Ethan said, his voice breaking. Welcome to the family, buddy. When Liam and Emma arrived an hour later, Emma burst into the room with barely contained excitement. Can I see him? Can I hold him? What does he look like? Shh, Liam said, but he was smiling. People are sleeping, Emma. Not anymore, a nurse said good-naturedly. Not with Owen's pipes. Clara held Owen up so Emma could see, and her daughter's whole face transformed with wonder. He's so tiny, Emma breathed. Look at his little fingers. Want to hold him? Clara asked. Emma nodded eagerly, and Ethan helped her settle into the chair with pillows supporting her arms. They carefully placed Owen in her lap, and Emma stared down at her baby brother with fierce concentration. Hi, Owen. I'm your big sister, Emma. I'm going to teach you everything important, like how to tie your shoes and what cartoons are the best, and how to avoid eating Brussels sprouts. Liam laughed. Good priorities, Emma. Your turn, Clara said, looking at Liam. Their 16-year-old son looked uncertain. I don't want to hurt him. You won't. Come here. Liam took Emma's place in the chair, and Ethan placed Owen in his arms. Watching his teenage son hold his newborn son created a strange loop of time and memory. 16 years ago, Ethan had held Liam like this, brand new and perfect and terrifying. Now Liam was holding Owen with the same mixture of awe and fear. He's so small, Liam said softly. Was I this small? You were actually bigger, 8 pounds, 9 ounces. Wow. Liam looked down at Owen, who'd stopped crying and was making small squeaking noises. Hey, little brother, I'm Liam. I'm going to college soon, but I promise I'll come visit a lot. And when you're older, I'll teach you all the important stuff Dad taught me. The moment was so perfect it hurt. Ethan looked around the hospital room at his family, Clara exhausted but radiant, Emma chattering about all the things she and Owen would do together, Liam holding his baby brother with surprising tenderness, and felt overwhelming gratitude. They'd built this. From grief and loneliness and an impossible request on a rainy October night, they'd built something beautiful. The first weeks with Owen were harder than Ethan remembered. Newborns were exhausting under the best circumstances, but with Clara recovering from delivery, and Ethan back at work, and Emma needing attention and Liam preparing for graduation, the household teetered on the edge of chaos. But they managed. They took turns with night feedings. They accepted help from neighbors who brought meals. They lowered their standards for housekeeping and learned to function on minimal sleep. Emma was a devoted big sister, singing to Owen when he cried and bringing Clara diapers before she even asked. Liam came home every weekend to help, studying between diaper changes and somehow maintaining his grades despite the disruption. Ethan watched his family adapt and evolve, making room for this new person in ways both practical and emotional. Owen became the center of their universe, his needs dictating schedules and sleep and everything else. But slowly, they found their rhythm. Owen started sleeping for longer stretches. Clara healed and regained her energy. The fog of early parenthood began to lift, and they could see clearly again. Liam's graduation in June was emotional. Ethan sat in the bleachers with Clara beside him, Owen asleep in a carrier strapped to her chest, and Emma between them wearing her fancy dress and complaining that the ceremony was boring. That's my brother, Emma announced proudly when Liam's name was called. Ethan watched his firstborn walk across the stage, accept his diploma, and move his tassel from right to left. This was the child he'd raised alone through grief and uncertainty, the boy who'd grown into a remarkable young man despite all the challenges life had thrown at them. At the graduation party in their backyard later, friends and family gathered to celebrate. Liam was heading to college in the fall, ready to start his own life, and Ethan was trying not to think about how empty the house would feel without him. You did good, Dad, Liam said, finding Ethan alone by the grill. We did good. You did most of the work. That's not true. You were there every day, even when it was hard. Even when you were grieving Mom and trying to figure out how to be both parents. Liam paused. And then you let Clara and Emma in and made our family bigger, and now there's Owen. You built something amazing. We built it together. All of us. Liam smiled. Yeah. We did. As summer progressed, they prepared for Liam's departure, bought dorm supplies, packed his belongings, and tried to ignore the impending emptiness. Emma was clingy, following Liam everywhere, and he was patient with her in a way that made Ethan's heart ache. "I'm going to miss you so much," Emma said the night before Liam left. "I'm going to miss you too, Squirt, but I'll be back for Thanksgiving. That's only a few months. That's forever. It'll go faster than you think." The day Liam left for college, they loaded his car with boxes and bags and everything he'd need for his new life. Owen was fussy, sensing the tension, and Emma was trying not to cry. "Take care of them," Liam said to Ethan, pulling him into a hug. "I will. You take care of yourself." "And call me if you need anything," Liam said to Clara. "I'm only 2 hours away." "We'll be fine. You focus on your studies and having fun. And make good choices," Emma added, clearly parroting something she'd heard adults say. Liam laughed and hugged his little sister. "I'll try. You take care of Owen, okay? And don't let Mom and Dad go crazy without me." "I won't." They waved as Liam drove away, standing in the driveway until his car disappeared around the corner. Then Emma burst into tears and Clara wasn't far behind, and even Ethan felt his eyes burning. "He'll be back," Ethan said, pulling them both close while Owen gurgled obliviously from his carrier. "He'll be back." But the house felt wrong without Liam. His absence was a physical presence, his empty chair at dinner a reminder of how things had changed. Emma moped for weeks, and even Owen seemed to look around for his big brother. Slowly, they adjusted. Emma threw herself into school and dance. Owen grew and changed daily, his personality emerging. Clara returned to part-time work at the library, grateful for adult conversation and structure. And Ethan learned to navigate this new phase of fatherhood, with 1 child launched and 2 still at home. True to his word, Liam came home for Thanksgiving. Emma tackled him at the door, and even Owen seemed to recognize him, reaching out his chubby arms to be held. "Look how big he's gotten," Liam marveled, holding his 4-month-old brother. "He wasn't doing this last time I saw him." "He's growing too fast," Clara said. "They all do." That Thanksgiving, sitting around the table with all 5 of them together, Ethan felt profoundly grateful. Not just for the food or the day, but for the journey that had brought them here. For the knock on the door that had changed everything. For the courage to say yes to something impossible. "What are you thankful for?" Emma asked, going around the table. "I'm thankful for this family," Clara said. "Every complicated, beautiful piece of it." "I'm thankful for college," Liam said, "and for being able to come home to you guys." "I'm thankful for Owen," Emma said, "even though he's loud sometimes." "I'm thankful for second chances," Ethan said quietly, "for the opportunity to build something new from something broken." They went around the table sharing gratitude, even making up what Owen would say if he could talk. And it was perfect in its imperfection. The years that followed brought their own challenges and joys. Emma grew into a teenager with strong opinions and bigger dreams. Owen became a toddler, then a preschooler, keeping them young and exhausted in equal measure. Liam visited when he could, brought home a girlfriend, then a fiancée, then news that he was going to graduate school. Clara and Ethan grew older together, their love deepening with time and shared experience. They fought about money and parenting and whose turn it was to handle the latest crisis. They laughed at inside jokes and private moments. They built a life that was messy and real and utterly theirs. One evening when Owen was 5 and Emma was 13 and Liam was home for the weekend with his fiancée Sarah, they gathered in the backyard for a barbecue. Owen was playing with the dog they'd adopted. Emma was showing Sarah her dance routine, and Liam was helping Ethan at the grill. "Dad," Liam said quietly, "I want to ask you something." "Shoot." "Sarah and I are getting married next summer, and I want you to be my best man." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "I'd be honored. And I was thinking about Mom, about Rebecca." Liam paused. "Is it okay if we include her somehow? Maybe a moment of silence or a photo? I want to acknowledge that she was part of my story, even if she's not here to see this." "I think that's beautiful, Liam. And yes, it's more than okay." They stood there together, father and son, watching their family gathered in the golden evening light. "You know what's crazy?" Liam said. "If Mom hadn't died, none of this would exist. Not Emma, not Owen, not Clara. This whole family wouldn't be here." "I know. Does that make you feel guilty?" Like you're glad something terrible happened because it led to something good? Ethan thought about it carefully. No, I'm not glad Rebecca died. That pain is still there, and it always will be. But I'm grateful that when Clara knocked on my door asking for help, I was brave enough to say yes. That out of grief, we managed to build something beautiful. Do you think Mom would approve of all of this? I think your mom would want me to be happy, to give you siblings and build a life worth living. She'd probably tell me I took too long to figure it out. Liam smiled. Yeah, she probably would. Clara appeared beside them, Owen on her hip. The chef and his assistant are being suspiciously quiet over here. Just talking, Ethan said, pulling her close with his free arm. About anything important? About how lucky we are, Liam said simply. That night, after everyone had gone to bed and the house was finally quiet, Ethan found himself standing in the hallway looking at the photos on the wall. There was one of Rebecca holding newborn Liam, one of Clara pregnant with Emma, one of their wedding day, one of Liam's graduation, snapshots of a life pieced together from loss and hope and stubborn determination to keep going. Clara emerged from their bedroom in her pajamas. Can't sleep? Just thinking. About? About that night you knocked on my door. About how terrified we both were. Clara moved to stand beside him, studying the photos. I was so sure you'd say no. I had this whole speech prepared about why it made sense, but I was convinced you'd think I was crazy. I did think you were crazy. I also thought I was crazy for saying yes. Best crazy decision we ever made. Agreed. They stood there in the quiet hallway, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way and built something that defied explanation. Their family wasn't traditional, it wasn't simple, but it was theirs, and it was real, and it was enough. Years later, when Owen was in high school and Emma was preparing for college, and Liam had children of his own, people would sometimes ask how Clara and Ethan's story began. The question usually came up at family gatherings or when new friends learned about their age gap and the spacing between their children. Ethan's answer was always the same. It started with a knock on the door, he'd say, and the courage to say yes to something impossible. Claire would add, we built our family from grief and hope and the belief that love doesn't follow a script. And their children would nod, understanding that their family's origin story was unconventional but beautiful, messy but real, and exactly what it needed to be. Because sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes family is built rather than born. And sometimes saying yes to an impossible request on a rainy October night leads to everything you never knew you needed. The Cole family was proof of that. A mechanic, a librarian, and 3 children who shared love, if not always biology. A family built on honesty, courage, and the willingness to take a chance on something that made no logical sense but every emotional sense. They weren't perfect. They fought and struggled and made mistakes. But they were real. And they were together. And that was more than enough. In the end, that's all any family really is. A group of people who choose each other, day after day, through joy and grief and everything in between. Who build a life together from whatever materials they're given and call it home. And home, as it turned out, was exactly where they were meant to be.